Hi everyone! In this video we're going to achieve this result. It's a current date and time landing page where we show here the current date and here the current time with the hours, minutes and seconds. We introduce a nice background image and an opaque layer on top of it in order to have the main content with a high contrast. Okay, let's dive into the code. I'm going to close this tab. I've already loaded here our background image. I have found it on Unsplash website. Then I create our index HTML file. And leveraging Emmet, that is a plugin pre-installed in Visual Studio Code, we can spin up an HTML page. I give it a title, current date and time, and we can start the development of our web page. I introduce the title. We can already see my title, for example. I use a live server Visual Studio plugin in order to have my page refreshing automatically. Here it is. If I change it here and I save it, it will automatically refresh there. Perfect. So in this case, I just say day here. I introduce an ID to this paragraph element. Perfect. Then we can just introduce the other elements. Basically, it's a list of 3 items, one for the hours, the other for the minutes, and the third one for the seconds. So it's a div with a class counter list. Perfect. And 3 items, each with a class item, where we have a paragraph with a class number and an ID. For the first one, it's hours. Just give an example, 11, an example value. And then another paragraph for the unit of measure, hours. Here we are. I can just copy this one and paste it there. This one is for the minutes. I can introduce just an example of minutes, 21. Here we are. And then another one for the seconds. Okay, perfect. I have it there, just an example. Here it is, our web page. With the date that will be there, I have a placeholder here, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. Let's go and style it. And in order to style it, we are going to introduce a style sheet with a link. I'm going to call it style.css, and we're going to create this file. Closing this one. Sorry, I just introduced it there, so I'm going to move it outside this folder. Perfect. I need to reboot the live server page. We should see it there. Perfect. And now we can introduce the style page. Here we are. Let's introduce some preset in order to override the browser's elements. I just set the margin and the padding to 0. Here we are. I save the page and we see already the result there. Best practice is also to set the box sizing to border box. Perfect. And now we can start styling our page. We start from the body, introducing the background image, the background opaque layer, and then we can style our elements. In the body, we start defining our font family. I don't want to use a particular Google style font. I'm going to use a sans serif. It's a nice, easy one. Then I set the minimum page height to 100 VH. Basically, I'm going to tell him to occupy the whole page in a vertical sense. And then we can set the background. With our background image, we do that by setting the URL. And we go and take our image and image.png. Perfect. I'm going to specify that I don't want it to repeat. I want it to be center. And also I can specify, I'm going to close this one, so I have more space. And then here I can specify that I want the background size to cover our space in order for the image to occupy all the available space. I'm going to set the color of our text white. Perfect. We can see there. We want to center our content, and in order to center it, we leverage display flex. Here we are, display flex, and we justify the content in the center. We align items in the center in order, here it's our content, in order to center it vertically and horizontally. This centers it horizontally when the flex direction is row, and this centers it vertically again when the flex direction is row. In our case, now we want to center the other way around, so we want this to be on top and this one to be aligned here. So we want our flex direction to be column. Here we are. We can see that we have our date here placed there and our content with the time behind at the bottom. Then we introduce a bit of padding. That is good when we shrink our screen. And now we want to introduce this opaque layer in order to have this text more in result. We introduce a before layer to our body. In order to see the before pseudo element, we need to set the content at least to an empty content. Then we can tell this opaque layer to position fixed, to be top 0, left 0, with 100%, and the same for the 8. 100%. Here we are, and now we can just introduce a background color to our new layer. Background, where is it? Background color, here we are, and we can use RGBA in order to have an opaque color. So 0, 0, 0, and 1 will be a black color. We want to introduce a bit of opacity, so I say 0.8 in this way. Now we see that this goes on top of our text, and that is because we need to set the property position relative to our content, and we do that by selecting the title and our counter list there. So ptitle and our class counter list to be position relative. Here we are, and they are on top. So let's start styling our ptitle. I remember you, the ptitle is the place where we are going to insert our date. Let's say date, are they here? Perfect. Ptitle, we're going to set the font size to 4 pm, the letter spacing to 1 pixel, the margin bottom to 32 pixels. Perfect. We are going to make it bold. And then to align the text at the center. It will be very useful when we will show a responsive website. When we shrink the screen, it will be very good to have it positioned at the center. Text align center. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to style this time. So it's our counter list element. Here it is. We have this counter list item wrapping our elements. Here we are. So we can specify already that the width is 100% and perfect, but we want those items, 1, 2, and 3 to be positioned at the center. Again, we use the display property, display flex, and then justify content center and align items center. Here we are, they are placed at the center. And now we are going to style each of these elements. If we see the HTML, I'm speaking about these 3 elements. So we have a wrapper, with an item class, and then each element has a number, a paragraph with a number class, and another paragraph with a unit class. Let's style them. Perfect. So let's style first the item, the wrapper of each element. I'm going to set the width and the height static, width and height 130 pixels. Then a background color. Again, I use the RGBA to have a green with, a black with a certain opacity. Here they are. Each element will have a margin, not bottom, but at every side of, in this case, 20 pixels. Then border radius of 50%, perfect. Then a border of 2 pixels solid. Again, we are using RGBA to introduce it a white color. 255 will be white color. Then we use an opacity, even in this case, to have a slightly gray color as a border color. And then we need again to center the content. Here it's on the top left position. Again, we can use display. Perfect. But in this case, it's horizontally aligned. So we use a flex direction of column. Here we are. It's going to go in the direction we want. Then we style first the number and then our unit. So our class number, we're going to increase the font size. Here we are, 2.8 AM, here it is. Then to make it bold, and then to introduce a little margin at the bottom. Let's say 8 pixels. Perfect. Let's style the unit. We make it uppercase, so it's a text transform uppercase. Here we are. Let's give it a bit of color. Color, if I can spell it correctly. So it's 57B846. Perfect. A bit of letter spacing. And we reduce the font size. Okay, good. Now we have this static site. Let's give it a bit of dynamicity, introducing the date here and our hours, minutes, and seconds. Here we are. We could as well introduce an external JavaScript file, and this is a best practice. As the JavaScript, in our case, it's quite small, I'm going to use a script tag here to introduce the little bit of JavaScript we need. But remember, it's a best practice to introduce it in an external file. I use a script here. I introduce a function var compute date. It's an arrow function where first I instantiate the current date, so it's var now, and I use the JavaScript date object. I instantiate a new date from the JavaScript date object. Then I'm going to compute the full date from that. Let's introduce a comment. Here we are. I'm going to compute the year from the date we already instantiated. So now dot get full year. Perfect. I'm going to compute the month and the day. It's two local string. Then first we need the localization information. We can insert here the default and it will pick the localization of our browser. Otherwise, in this case, I will specify an English US localization. Otherwise it would have introduced my Italian localization, and so the Italian month name, not everyone would have understood that. And we specify by saying that month long that we want the name of the month expressed there. Then we get the date, the day, sorry, and it's now dot get data. get that. Here we are. Now we can compute the time. Perfect. So we have instantiated our elements with the ID, with the hours, minutes, and the seconds ID. We are going to fill those elements, these and these HTML elements, as well as the date HTML elements, that is the paragraph with the ID day. So let's fill them. I'm going to select them with document.getElement by ID. We are going to specify we want first the hours, and then we specify that we want to fill the inner HTML. Here we are, equal to now dot get hours. And the same, I'm going to copy and paste this line 3 times. Here it's for the minutes. We want to get the minutes. And here it's our seconds. And we want to fill the seconds with the get seconds function. Here we are. Sorry. Perfect. Now we want also to replace this placeholder with our real date, and we can first select this element. So document get element by ID. We select our ID, that is this one, it's day. So I select the day, and then I can again specify inner HTML to be equal to, I'm going to introduce here the month, the day, and the year we already computed before, and particularly in this order. The month, then again the day, and then the year. Perfect. Here we are. So we do not see the result in this case, because we have created this function, but we are not calling it. So to call it, it will be needed for me to call it in this way. But the problem is that everything works. It's July 6, 2021. It's 1827. My problem is that I want it to refresh and to compute every time the new second and show it. So what we are going to do is that we are going to introduce it into a set interval that is computed every 1000 milliseconds, it means every second, and every second we are going to call this function, the compute date that we have declared there. If I save it, not only it will call it the first time, but every second it will call it again. Here we are. We can see the seconds increasing and everything is updated. Perfect. The last thing I would like to do is to make it a bit more responsive, because in fact, if we try to inspect the element with the F12 Chrome, if we click there and try to see how we will see it in an iPhone X, we see that it's not pretty well styled. So I introduced a very little media query with little changes in order to make it pretty even in small devices. And I do it leveraging, as I said, media queries. When the width is less than 580 pixels, I'm going to style the body with the font size of 10 pixels. Here we are, it's a bit smaller. Then I'm going to style the title, introducing a bit more of margin, sorry, a bit less of margin. It was 32 pixels, it seems to me a bit too much. I want those to be closer. So I'm setting now the margin bottom to 16 pixels. And the last thing that I need to do is to style each item with a width of, it was 130 pixels, I set it to 90 pixels, the same for the height. Perfect. And I introduce a bit of margin. Sorry, it was 20 pixels. I want to reduce it to 8 pixels. Perfect. This is our result. I'm going to select, for example, a Galaxy S5, and we see that it works pretty well when we are in different devices, in a Galaxy, in an iPhone, or when we are in a landing page. I'm going to introduce it full screen. It seems to me quite pretty way to introduce a landing page if you need this kind of scenario, a landing page with your date and the time. This is the end of the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. See you in the next video. Bye.